Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 6 years. And even though I say I'm Canadian pretty much in every video, I always get comments from Brits telling me basically, you've been living in the UK for years now. You gotta stop saying these American words. So today I have 13 American words that I still say even though I live in the UK. If you like this video and you'd like to see more videos of what it's truly like being a foreigner living in the UK, please consider subscribing. But without further ado, let's go. First up, we have bathroom. And this one causes a lot of controversy. Canadians and Americans have a couple of words for this particular room, this controversial room. Bathroom, I think, is the most popular. You also have washroom and you also have restroom. I think restroom tends to be a bit more American, but either way, we have these types of words to refer to that room. But if you call it a bathroom here in the UK and there's no bath in it, get ready. Here in the UK, most Brits will say toilet. Where are your toilets? I need to go to the toilet, that sort of thing. Or perhaps loo. Loo is another one. Or perhaps there's a variety of colorful words that some Brits will call that particular room. But I think toilets is the most popular, where in North America, bathrooms is most popular. Now, I totally understand the Brits' annoyance with this word because we refer to all bathrooms as bathrooms, whether they have a bath in it or not. It's just the default word. It feels a bit more polite, perhaps, as a Canadian to me. Bathroom feels a lot more polite than saying, where's the toilet? Toilet is just so visual to me. So if you are here in the UK, you go to a pub, you ask someone where are the toilets, that's perfectly acceptable. To me, it still feels very visual and like just a bit too on the nose, maybe a bit less polite perhaps. If you were to go to Canada or America as a British person, you would not want to ask where the toilet is because that is quite rude. So, you know, different countries, different customs, it's what makes us interesting. But as a Canadian living in the UK, I still say bathroom because I just can't quite bring myself to say toilet just yet. Another American word that I still say is pavement. Now, pavement is a little bit tricky because what I mean by pavement and what you mean by pavement are probably different. So to me, the pavement is the road. It's the bit that a car drives on, that is the pavement. For most Brits, the pavement is the side of the road that people walk on. To me, that is a sidewalk. It's a quite literal word. It's the sidewalk. Pavement is the road, but for Brits, pavement is the sidewalk. I know, gets a little bit confusing. This one always kind of trips me up because I'm so used to saying sidewalk. It's a good word. It's a very visual, specific. It is the sidewalk. But to Brits, it's the pavement. Gets a little bit confusing. I can't help myself sometimes. I gotta say pavement for the road. Next up, we have cookie. Now, I try really hard to say biscuit, which is the British equivalent of a cookie. I really do try to say biscuit. And if I'm thinking about what I'm saying, I will typically say biscuit. But I have noticed sometimes when I'm editing, I do all my own editing, for better or for worse, I'm so sorry. When I'm editing some of my videos, I think that I'm saying biscuit, and then as I'm editing, I realize that I've like defaulted back to cookie. So I really try with this one. Biscuit's a great word, but it is quite ingrained that it is a cookie, but I'm working on it. I'm trying my best. Another Americanism that I still say is parking lot. So the British equivalent is typically a car park, but for some reason that feels really weird when I say a car park. It's still quite visual, you know what it is, but for me it will always be a parking lot. So if I'm going somewhere, it's like, you know, where can you park? Is there a parking lot? Is the parking lot full? All that kind of stuff. But really it should be a car park. This one's tricky for me though. And I don't have a car anymore, so this hasn't been an issue in recent months, but it will be again in the future. Next up, we have highway. I still say highway. I should be saying motorway. Motorway does make sense, you know, you're motoring along. But yeah, highway is just so in there that I still default to highway. But if I'm talking to somebody that I don't know, and here's a big distinction. That's a tricky word in and of itself. When I'm talking to a British person that I don't know, I instinctively try very hard to say the British equivalent because I want to be polite to that person. We are in their country. We are speaking their language. I want to use their words if I know them. Sometimes I don't know. Okay. I really try to say their words. Now, if I'm talking to someone I know or a friend or something casual, sometimes I will still default naturally to highway or cookie, you know, bathroom, because that is just what's completely natural to me. That's what the word I learned, you know, the first word for that thing is that's the word I learned. And I'm just much more comfortable talking to that person. But I do try for people I don't know. And I would say for any foreigners watching, you want to say the British word, just like if you move to a foreign country, you know, you want to speak their language. So I do try with Brits, but if I'm talking to someone I'm comfortable with, sometimes I slip up. Another controversial word that I use, an Americanism that sometimes drives the Brits in the comments insane, is math. Yes, the word in question is mathematics. When you shorten that down for the Brits, they will say maths with an S on the end. Canadians and Americans will shorten that one letter further to math. It's like the least amount of letters for short form, you know, it's the smallest you can get, but the Brits like to add that S on the end, maths. I've spoken about this in the odd video where, you know, I've just thrown out math without even thinking about it. And the comments are just like flooded with people saying it's not math, it's maths. So this one seems to drive a certain type of person kind of crazy. So if that's you, all right, cool. Another Americanism versus Britishism that I get confused and I still have to think about are chips. So UK chips are fries, but American Canadian chips are crisps. So whenever I go out to a restaurant or a pub or something and I'm reading the menu, when I see crisps or chips, I have to really think about what that actually means. Because most times, I would love chips. But I might think that's crisps, which is not crisps. Chips are fries. What I really want is fries with just chips. But to me, chips means crisps. I don't want crisps. I want chips. But I don't want Canadian or American chips. I want fries. So this one can get a little bit confusing. I just have to like think about it for a moment. Like, okay, what is this actually? What is it? Which one is this? Because most of the time, I want fries. I don't want chips. I want chips. I don't want crisps. I think we are on number 8. Number 8 is garbage. So garbage is kind of funny in North America. We use garbage for a bunch of different things. You could very easily say, can you throw out the garbage in the garbage? So the garbage bin sometimes is just referred to as the garbage, but the actual thing that you were throwing out can also be referred to as garbage. So you put the garbage in the garbage, which is nuts when you think about it. So here in the UK, I find people typically will refer to that receptacle as the bin. Can you put that in the bin? Can you put that rubbish in the bin? If I am with friends or people that I actually know, I usually will default, can you put that in the garbage? Or I'll be like, is this garbage? So garbage is like just in there, which you never really think about. But really, you should be saying something along the lines of putting the rubbish in the bin. People have different words for it, but typically it's rubbish and bin. I'm gonna sneeze. I'm so sorry. I've completely lost my train of thought, so let's move on. Our next Americanism that I still say, even though I'm living in the UK, is backyard. So here in the UK, people will typically say a garden. Do you have a garden? Some people will say back garden, but I think garden tends to just kind of be like the basic word. To me, a garden means flowers. So in America and in Canada, we typically say, do you have a yard or do you have a backyard? Because the backyard may or may not have flowers. So it's, you know, it's a yard. It is the backyard. It's the yard behind your house. Whereas here, people typically will say garden, but to me, that means flowers. So I always tend to sort of say backyard. That's the default for me. It doesn't really matter because here I don't have any of that. This flat does not have a backyard, a garden, a back garden, none of it. So it hasn't really been an issue of late. But if we are referring to a patch of space outside behind your home, I typically say backyard. Next, we have vacuum. So this word to Americans and Canadians has multiple meanings. Basically, the thing that you use to suck up stuff is a vacuum. But you can also say, I need to vacuum, or I'm going to vacuum, or can you pick up your stuff off the ground? I'm gonna vacuum, that sort of thing. So the actual item is a vacuum, and the action is to vacuum. Now the Brits tend to say Hoover. Of course, not all of them, okay? But Hoover, I think, is like the most popular. And I always wondered why this was. And I did a little bit of a Google, did a little bit of a Bing. And I found this quite interesting. Maybe it's not to you, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. So a lot of countries use the term vacuum. It is like a neutral term for the machine and the action. Now, some countries like the UK and Ireland use Hoover, as in the thing could be the Hoover, or you are hoovering, or you need to hoover. And that is because it is a trademarked name. So Hoover comes from the Hoover Company, one of the first and most influential companies in the development of this device. So Brits refer to that action and that item based on one of the main companies, Hoover. Whereas a lot of other countries use a neutral term, like there is no country that's vacuum. It's just like a neutral word, which I thought was so interesting. Maybe not for everybody, but I thought it was cool. Similarly, that word doesn't sound right anymore. Kleenex is another word. So for Americans and Canadians, Kleenex is a tissue. So Brits would typically say tissue, but a lot of people I know and a lot of Americans and Canadians, we will say Kleenex. But Kleenex is the brand. So like Hoover, Brits say Hoover, which is a brand. Canadians, Americans say vacuum, which is like a neutral term. Canadians and Americans typically say Kleenex, which is a brand of tissues. Fascinating. But yeah, I still say Kleenex, even though the brands of tissues that I'm using here are not necessarily Kleenex, nor would they be in Canada. It's just kind of like, it's a Kleenex. I don't know why. Next up, another American word that I still say is line, as in, was there a long line? I'm in the line. Is there gonna be a line? Do you know where the line is? I typically will say line. Now, the Brits will say queue, and queue is a very important part of British culture. But when I'm talking to a British person, I try to say queue, or in my videos, I try to use queue, but in my heart, in my brain, I am still saying to myself, line. So get in the lineup. Is there a long line? Don't cut the line. Don't jump the line. I'm in the line, where Brits will say queue. Don't cut the queue. Respect the queue. There's a long queue. Where's the queue? So line, queue. I mean, both are good words. Next, we have dessert. Anybody want some dessert? So here in the UK, there's actually like quite a decent history on the word pudding. So pudding typically refers to the course that you have after the main course. So pudding is just like a general name for that course. Sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's savory. Maybe you're having like a lovely cheese board for your pudding. I don't know, you can do what you want. This word is a little bit confusing because any Americans or Canadians watching, pudding is an actual item. It's like Angel Delight, which I actually recently did a video on Angel Delight that you can watch on my Patreon. How about that segue? Anyway, pudding is very much like Angel Delight. It's like a moussey, it's pudding. You can have chocolate pudding, you can have strawberry pudding, whatever. It's an actual item, and perhaps your mom packed it in your lunchbox for school. I don't know. Pudding is a thing. But here in the UK, pudding is much more of a broad term. It typically refers to like that whole meal, but it can get even more confusing because you can have, steak and ale pudding. You can have Yorkshire pudding. You can have all sorts of things that are pudding, which gets a bit confusing. But typically, after your main meal, someone would say, do you want pudding? What's for pudding? We're having so-and-so for pudding, whatever. But for me, I still say dessert just because, that's the one that comes naturally. Pudding kind of confuses me a little bit, especially when you get into Yorkshire pudding. Yorkshire pudding you wouldn't have for pudding. Yorkshire pudding you would probably have during your main course just to make things a little bit more confusing. I do get the odd email or comment or direct message from people saying, you've lived in the UK for so long, you shouldn't be saying any of these Americanisms anymore. And I don't think that's fair. To change yourself fully and completely is kind of a big ask, and it does take a long time. So even though I have lived here in the UK, I work here in the UK for the last 6 years, a lot of my vocabulary has changed, and I do say quite a few British phrases and words and slang and all that kind of stuff that I've picked up over the last 6 years, but not entirely. And maybe when I'm in the UK for 12 years, we add another 6 on top. Perhaps at that point, my vocabulary will be primarily British or 100% British, who knows? But to change your whole self, to strip out all those Americanisms, it does take time. It's something that is so ingrained in your brain. But I do try my best. I do try to say the British version, but I'm not perfect. Surprise. If you like videos on British culture or British words, vocabulary, and slang, check out this video where I tried to guess 17 traditional British sayings to varying success. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!